Morning. Good morning and welcome to Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We extend our welcome this morning, especially to anybody who might be joining us for the first time or in the early stages of exploring our community, and we invite you to fill out our visitor form. And you'll also find that in the comments, or there's a link in the chat if you're online with us this morning. Good morning also to Zoom and YouTube people who are with us this morning as well. My name's Laura Thompson. I'm the minister here. Yeah. For those of you joining us the first time, I don't get applause like that every Sunday, but oh, that would be nice. I'm just saying. But it's with joy and gratitude that I rejoin with you all today after being on sabbatical for 5 months. So welcome back to me. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you. Our Sunday morning gatherings are a time of grounding and recentering ourselves, a time of sharing joys and sorrows. Together, we learn and grow using our imaginations and actions to reveal a world centered around love, justice, and peace. We acknowledge that we live and do our work and strive to love one another on lands that are the ancestral, contemporary, and spiritual homelands to the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. I also want to lift up that November is Native American Heritage Month, and I did post some links in the social action, racial justice part of the Friday email, if you get that, with some great ways for you to recognize or celebrate that. So check that out, and I'll be posting things there all month. Just a couple more announcements before we start too. I want to lift up that the Racial Justice Social Action Committee folks are meeting next Sunday at 9 before the service. That will be here and also on Zoom. That's a planning meeting. So anybody who's expressed interest in either of those committees. Maybe you want to do that work. Maybe you're new here and you're interested in hearing more about it. Please come to that next Sunday at 9. And if you need a Zoom link, you can contact Jeannie in the office. She'll have it later in the week, or you can contact Tom Ellinger if you have his contact information. For other things, all things going on in VUUF, the November Unison is out, and there's a calendar there and articles and all the things that you need to get in touch with what's going on and to dive a little deeper with this month's theme, which is change. Last but not least, there's cake after the service today. Just lots and lots of cake, which means there'll be cake after next week's service, possibly the week after that, as we put it in the freezer. So we can enjoy that maybe more than just today. And there's takeout containers as well in the fellowship hall. If you need to take some cake home for later, please do. We want to continue our service this morning with our tradition of lighting our chalice. So I ask you to please join me in the words which are on your order of service or printed on the screen behind me. As we nurture this flame together, we become a light of hope. Sorrow into comfort. Our faith burns as a steady flame of innovation, renewing us and illuminating the path ahead. Together, we turn this world from bleak to bright. Nicole and Lark aren't here this morning, but they've got a wonderful video to lead us in our opening hymn, which is number 54, Now Light is Less.
Last noon skies are wide and deep. The ravages of wind and rain are healed. The haze of harvest drifts along the fields until clear eyes put on the look of sleep. The garden spider weaves a silken pair to keep inclement weather from its young. Straight from the oakling all summer is hung. At dusk our slow breath thickens on the air. Lost hues of birds the trees take as their own. Long since blood-sweet was gathered into sheaves. The walker trudges ankles deep in leaves. The feather of the milkweed flutters down.
At the foundation of creating a world that is loving and just is education and community. Please join in singing our children as they make their way to their learning and shared space this morning.
Where you go, I will go, children. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, children. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine.
And each week, we set aside a few minutes to lift up the joys and sorrows of the congregation. Somebody will have a microphone if you want to raise your hand, or you can come up here and speak on this microphone. Fran maybe can tell us if there's folks on Zoom that are typing something in the chat. If you come up here, I invite you to take a stone and drop it into our vessel for joys and sorrows.
Is it working? Oh, there we go. Woo! You definitely tell the difference, don't you? I just want to raise a joy to have Reverend Laura back. Very happy to have you here. And also to say a sincere thank you to Leslie, Nancy, and Linda for all of the hard work that they did while Laura was away. We could not have made it through those 5 months without you and everything that you contributed during that time. Thanks for keeping us together in community, and we really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Andrea Anderson, and I just wanted everybody to keep Babita Asif and her family on your hearts and minds. She's about 9 days out from surgery, and she's still in a lot of pain, and she's pretty tired. So if you could think good thoughts for her and her family, that would be awesome.
I'm Addie, and I want to share that my birthday party is this weekend, so I'm just excited for that.
I'm Jody, and I'm really have a joy that Kate and Jason are playing for us this morning.
Leslie Swenson, I just want to continue to remember Marilyn Burt, who is in Presbyterian Homes.
And who's, I will add, well, though I haven't seen her in a few days, but she's certainly capable of having visitors still. So anybody who wants to go see her, she'd love to see you.
I don't know if this is a joy or an announcement, but the men's group is meeting by Zoom on Thursday, and our speaker is a philosopher who talks about searching for truth. And he's written a book, and it's the first book I found that makes explicit reference to our fourth principle and identifies us as Unitarian Universalists. So I think you can find a Zoom link for that in the Friday announcements. If you can't, send me an email. Thanks.
Thanks, John. It's also in the newsletter. So if you don't get our email, you can always go to the website and click on the link for the newsletter to find all of that information. Are there any other joys or sorrows or gratitudes or announcements or Steve? Oh, wait for a microphone.
We did finally get the new thermostats installed. If anyone, and the furnace, yes. That's probably more important. If anyone has any questions about how the thermostats work or anything, just see me and I'll help you.
Yes, George. Yeah. I will say that the new thermostats can be controlled with an app. So that also means that if it's possible and you can't figure it out that you're having a meeting here, you could text one of the staff and we could probably adjust it from our home for you. Is that correct? Okay. Oh, so you don't need a degree like you did with the last one. All right. But we'll hope that it works out better this time. Anybody else? All right, well, we lift up the joys and concerns and sorrows and goings on that were shared alongside those that remain in the sanctuary of our hearts. And I invite you all to join in our sung response. Oh, well, we can just sing it, right? Jason, do you know it?
And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer.
This coming Tuesday is election day, and I probably don't have to tell you, but it's an important election. As UUs, we value the process of democracy, and so it is important that we participate on election day. And so I'm asking all of you, do you have a plan to vote? Or maybe you've already voted, right? Good. A friend of mine asked me to ask 5 of my friends, so I'm like, I got that covered. Having a plan to vote is important. Every year I go to the state website before election day to make sure that my polling place hasn't changed, because sometimes they do. And I also like to know what's on my ballot in case I have to do any research about judges or soil conservationists or the likes of that, or school board. By the way, when there are school board people, I just ask the people that are here on the PTA about that, because I don't know. But anyway, you can go to menvotes.org and find all this information, your sample ballot, and make sure your polling place hasn't changed. I recommend that you do that. Also, I learned there are a massive amount of judges that will be on the second side of the ballot, all running unopposed. And a friend of mine told me that sometimes it's important to even fill in the incumbents, because sneaky folks will have write-in campaigns figuring that nobody's gonna fill in the back part where there's nobody opposed. So maybe that's something you want to do as well. Now, I know that you're all likely to have a voting plan and that you'll vote this election, but I was also asked to ask you to ask 5 of your friends and family. So maybe you can do that in the next couple of days, just when you're having conversations with friends or family or neighbors. Do they have a plan to vote? And you can refer them to that website, menvotes.org, where they can find out all of that information as well. You don't need to talk about politics to do this, or who's running, or who your favorites are. It's just all important that we get out to vote. Minnesota's really great about that, so we want to keep that going. Finally, I want to remind you that we serve as a polling site for Bloomington, and so be aware that the lower level will be dedicated to election polling all day on Tuesday. If you have to come in and out for church business, just be mindful that they're using that space. On that note, I want to graciously thank, where did you go, Kathy Eager? Where, I saw her earlier. Out there, who comes in pre-crack of dawn every year to 5:45 every year to open the building, and then comes back to close it later on at night. We're grateful for you doing that. And I also want to thank Kathy and Daryl for putting up the timeline that's out in the lobby right now. That timeline represents our first 50 years here. It was put up originally in 2016. And it's a great way to remember things that you may remember if you've been here a long time or a medium length of time. And for folks who are new, it's a great way just to kind of see how the fellowship has changed over the last 50+ years. So check that out. And thanks, Kathy, for putting that up. I know it's a lot of work to put that up every year. Speaking of gratitude, I want to use our centering space this morning for gratitude. The Haudenosaunee tradition has the Haudenosaunee people have a tradition of being grateful and giving thanks in a regular practice, both in everyday life and in spiritual occasions. They have this piece that's called the Thanksgiving Address, or it's called more accurately, the words that come before all else. And this is delivered in their language, both at the beginning and the end of social gatherings, celebrations, council meetings, and it's recited each morning at the beginning of the school day. It's not a prayer, but rather it's an offering of greetings and thanks to the natural world. Each part of creation is acknowledged. It's quite long, it's 3 pages. And I wanted to share just a couple of the verses with you today. Today we have gathered and we see the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one and we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. We are thankful to our Mother Earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, we send greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. So I am especially filled with gratitude today for this community as I return after 5 months leave. I'm grateful to the board for continuing their hard work of leading the congregation in this ever-changing environment while giving me a needed break. Likewise, I'm thankful to our committee leaders who kept the daily work of the church going, especially thankful to Congregational Care Committee and our pastoral care associates, that's Eve Bergman, Tom Ellinger, and Becky McPeak, for continuing to keep care for one another as the center part of our community. I'm grateful to our amazing staff for stepping up during my absence, doing extra work, having to be extra adhesive in places they're not used to being adhesive. We're incredibly blessed to have such a capable and skilled and thoughtful staff. And a special thanks to those who helped out during the Sunday services while I was gone, Linda and Fran and Tom Ellinger, Maria Bevere, Nicole Collins, Carla Reese, Jeannie, Richard Duffin, and all others who participated in the busy work of getting the Sunday service going. But finally, a huge thanks to Nancy Buckman and Linda Hayen and Leslie Swenson, who I will ask to stand, please. These, yes. These 3 amazing women served as the sabbatical committee and took on organizing Sunday service while I was gone, which is no small task. Sunday services are the cornerstone of our programming, and they're a big undertaking week after week with many moving parts. And so thank you so much for keeping everything afloat. And again, we have cake afterwards to celebrate that. So please join for cake. This fellowship exists and thrives solely on offerings of time and treasure from its members and friends. Your donations uphold the ministries that we do here to build a better world through love and service. As the ushers come forward to take the offering, I think there's a clipboard that they can also pass out. If you want to sign up to be a Sunday greeter or do hospitality for Sunday, you can do that. Thank you for your commitments and your generosity. Poet Katrina Kennison writes, "When the going gets tough, may I resist my first impulse to wade in, fix, explain, resolve, and restore. May I sit down instead. When the going gets tough, may I be quiet. May I steep for a while in stillness." So I started my ministry here back in 2016. And this was my first post as a professional minister. I hadn't even been ordained yet when I started here. Originally, I was brought in as a contract minister for a couple of years, but things went pretty good. So we decided to stay together. And this is where I belong. I belong in this community. You are my people. We've decided that whatever it is, that we are in it together. Right? But it has not always been easy these last 6 years. As you may recall, I hate to bring it up, but 2016 was also an important election year. I know it's hard to remember things that happened before the pandemic, it seems, but yes, that was an important election year. And we had, for the first time in American history, a viable major party favored to win, woman candidate running for president. We were all hyped. And then things didn't turn out as planned or that many of us hoped for those of us identifying as liberals. And Trump was elected. And many of us were outright mortified, right? Hopes diminished, our dreams shattered, our fear awakened. I will remark that the highest attendance rate that we've ever had since I've been here was that Sunday in 2016 after the election. I don't know who everybody was, but they needed to be here that day, right? So my professional ministry began in that environment. The work that we do as UUs is collectively for social and racial justice, for LGBTQ and women's rights, for environmental and economic justice, all of it. And suddenly we were up against a higher level of opposition than we had ever been, or it felt that way anyway. And so we entered into our relationship together with kind of a collective injury to our spirit. During that challenging time, we also had big changes here at the fellowship. Our director of religious education, beloved Sonia Johnston, retired after 17 years. Our director, or I'm sorry, after 43 years, sorry, I reversed her and Jan's numbers. 43 years, providing the congregation with inspiration and comfort. And Nicole became the new director of music, and Lark our accompanist. And we're blessed to have still a lively and thoughtful music program that still lifts up with inspiration and comforts us in our time of needs. And also during that time, our director of religious education retired after 17 years, Jan. And Andrea Johnson came in to cover that position for a couple of years, and she brought her commitment to racial justice to help us on that front as well. And now Maria Bevere helms Children, Youth, and Family Ministries, navigating us through those changes, the changing times that still are existing. And in that sector of work together, we've also had 3 youth coordinators. So lots of changes there. Meanwhile, we are on our 4th and hopefully final administrator and communications director, Jeannie, who's here. And go applaud Jeannie, because she's, I mean, but I have said this before, there have been times as the senior supervisor for staff where I felt like I was in the 80s sitcom Murphy Brown, because there was always somebody new at that desk. Some of you recall that Murphy always had a new secretary. And those of you working in manager or supervisor or hiring roles know how challenging and time consuming it is to do staffing. And then we've been through a lot of major changes. I'm happy to say that we came out on top. And again, we have this amazing professional team here right now. So that was all happening in my first couple of years here. Now, as if political upheaval and staff changes weren't enough to navigate in my early years of ministry, the universe saw fit to add a global pandemic into the mix. And this, of course, turned everything upside down. And we're still not completely sure of which way is up, right? We still feel really discombobulated from all of those challenges and change. We're not sure what's next. And so the question comes to me, well, how do you minister to that? And the straight up answer is, I don't know. I just kind of keep moving and keep going forward. But early in my ministry, I don't know what to do, but I know maybe I hang on more of how to be, right? So early in my ministry here, actually on that Sunday, that well-attended Sunday after the election, I spoke about Sikh activist Valerie Kaur, who posed the question, what if we are not surrounded by the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? And it is love that we are called to birth into this world. And to deliver this love into existence, she reminds us that we must do what the midwife says, which is breathe and push, right? So that's what we did, breathe. We came together to support one another in the ways that always had been done here. Push, we push. We sponsored an immigrant family coming from Somalia, right during the time when the Trump administration was trying to ban refugee settlement from numerous countries, including Somalia. Breathe. We started soul groups, small ministry, and we started meditation groups. Push. We did 2 rounds of beloved conversations, anti-racism work, formed a racial justice committee, and passed the 8th principle, which states that we covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Breathe and push. We navigated our way through a pandemic, adapting and learning new skills. Hello, people on Zoom and YouTube. To keep this community safe and together. We did all this in the last 6 years and so many other things too. Now, from my position, if I had to label it, I would use a phrase that the kids these days say a lot, and I would say it was extra. Right? Their use of the phrase extra means over the top, excessive, or dramatic, often referring to a person who's reacting to something in a over the top way. Now, I know that change is a constant, and honestly, a lot of my theology is wrapped up into the concepts of change and becoming. But friends, the last 6 years, it seems to me that the universe was being quite extra. A few years ago, before the pandemic came, I remember remarking to one of the leaders here that I was hoping that there would just be some time when major staff changes or an extra challenging political climate or some other crisis weren't the climate of the day. The Christian liturgical calendar is divided up into different seasons and events. There's Advent and Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, and Pentecost. These are the big focal points of their calendar year. They come with different colors, red and purple and white and maybe blue, I can't remember. But they make up less than half of the calendar. The rest of it is called ordinary time. It's green, ordinary time. Oh, how I longed for ordinary time, if there was such a thing, because I didn't know if I had the strength to push through anymore, and I didn't know if I had room to breathe anymore. And I know many of you know that feeling when you're living in the thick of it, like we are maybe right now, like you have been at other moments in your life. Setting the idea of pushing aside for the moment, how do you just get back to even that place of being able to breathe? Well, first and foremost, most simply, you let the metaphor become literal, and you just make space to do that. Breathe. So let's practice that. Invite you all just to take 5 or 6 deep breaths together, breathing in deeply and just concentrate on that breath coming in and breathing out and noticing the feeling of letting it go. Taking time, even if it's just for a moment, to focus on our breathing can make space for a shift in the wholeness of our very being. So a year ago, last summer, I asked our board of trustees to approve a sabbatical for me, to give me the space that I needed to get back to breathing, to claim some life-giving, green, ordinary time for myself. And here are the biggest takeaways that I have from my leave. First, you would think that relaxing is easy, but it's not so much. All too often, we overlook it or we don't make time for it, or we veg out and count that as our form of relaxing. And while vegging out certainly has its merit, it can't be our only form of relaxation. We need to have a deeper sense of calm, the kind of calm that can be found in focusing on the breath, taking a long bath, going for a walk in the woods, just sitting outside or even inside and looking out the window for a while with no other agenda but that. And of course, sitting snuggled with a favorite blanket or beloved pet, and just letting the sensations that are present in that moment be your focus. But you have to make time for this, or you have to make this just as much a priority as the work you are doing. And that's hard. So takeaway number 2, distance is a necessity sometimes. So when we think about vegging out, right? Watching TV or playing those, those addictive games on your phone where you match things and you get the little coins or the diamonds in your treasure chest or whatever it is, those kinds of things. Those are great to create some distance from the stress of our lives, right? They do take us away from that. And they're very accessible, and that's a good thing. But sometimes we need more distance. Pre-sabbatical, I usually did at least one silent 3-day retreat by myself a year. And this is a good practice. I recommend it. But my spirit had reached the point where I needed more distance from my daily work so that I could truly rest and recharge. I mean, it took a while, like the first couple months of my sabbatical, until I got to the point where my head was not consumed at some level throughout most of the day with programming and sermon ideas. In July, I had started going to meditation meetings and Dharma talks at Common Ground Meditation Center in Minneapolis. But I realized when I was there that every time the instructor was speaking, I would go right back into thinking about, we should try something like that. Right? And I would go, oh, just breathe, but it was really frustrating. And so I realized that I couldn't be in that setting, that was not the spiritual practice for me because it was not giving me the space to breathe, the distance to breathe. It was bringing me right back to my busy, thoughted, cycling mind. So that brings me to my final takeaway that I have from my sabbatical time today. And I'm saying just today because I really haven't had enough time and space away from the sabbatical itself for me to know all the ways that it nourished me and fed me. But here's my final takeaway. Not everything that you're doing for yourself or thinking about yourself is working as best as it can for you. And if what you're doing isn't working, you can change that. I spent the biggest chunk of my sabbatical outside of just trying to relax, engaged in the Emily program, which helps folks with disordered eating in many forms and with body dysmorphic disorder, which is a mental health condition in which you can't help but to be overcome with thoughts about flaws or what is wrong with your body. And here was my takeaway from that. That you would think I knew, and maybe I knew it here, but I didn't know it here. I have inherent worth and dignity. Just as I am called to affirm and promote that in others, as stated in our first principle, I'm also called to recognize and affirm my own. Just as I'm called to love others, so am I called to know that I am loved just the way I am. And so are you. And it's important that we take all the time and space that we need to care for ourselves as much as we care for others. I want to close by returning to that poem by Katrina Kinnison that I started out with. When the going gets tough, may I resist my first impulse to wade in, fix, explain, resolve, and restore. May I sit down instead. When the going gets tough, may I be quiet. May I steep for a while in stillness. When the going gets tough, may I have faith that things are unfolding as they are meant to. May I remember that my life is what it is, not what I ask for. May I find strength to bear it, the grace to accept it, the faith to embrace it. When the going gets tough, may I practice with what I'm given rather than wish for something else. When the going gets tough, may I assume nothing? May I not take it personally? May I opt for trust over doubt, compassion over suspicion, vulnerability over vengeance? When the going gets tough, may I open my heart before I open my mouth? I need that one. When the going gets tough, may I be the first to apologize? May I leave it at that? May I bend with all my being toward forgiveness? When the going gets tough, may I look for a door to step through rather than a wall to hide behind? When the going gets tough, may I turn my gaze up to the sky above my head rather than down at the mess at my feet? May I count my blessings? When the going gets tough, may I pause, reach out a hand, and make the way easier for someone else. When the going gets tough, may I remember that I'm not alone. May I be kind. When the going gets tough, may I choose love over fear every time. Blessed be, and amen. Again, I hope you'll stay around and join us for some socializing and cake downstairs. Folks who might be waiting to cut or serve the cake, please note that the sabbatical committee and I already took a photo and already sent it to Jeannie. So you don't need to wait for me to get cake going down there. I know the kids get impatient when they're waiting for me to get down there to slice a cake. So please join us for that. And will you all join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice? Extinguish this light. These we carry in our hearts. Have a good week, everyone.